Charles, thank you for making time to come and on my podcast. Make shit happen. And that's what we're going to do.
Anytime for you, Sammy. Let's make it happen.
Make shit happen. What you think about that one?
It sounded kind of like Bud Light or something. I don't know, man. What's up?
So, Charles, you an attorney.
Yes, sir.
And I know you have a radio show.
Right.
On Clear Channel, correct?
On iHeart's 950 KPRC.
Right. Well, they call it iHeart now. I'm sorry.
Right.
It used to be called Clear Channel.
It used to be Clear Channel, and then they spun that off for the Billboard. I don't know. It was before me.
Before you. And you used to be a police officer.
I was a police officer in the 90s, yes, sir.
In the 90s. And then you were also a judge.
I was a judge for about 9 years, yes, sir.
So you were a judge, a police officer, a judge, and now a full-time criminal attorney.
Well, I'm a named partner in a civil practice out of Beaumont, and then I've got a couple of offices here, one in Pearland, just east of us, and one down in Angleton. We do a lot of criminal defense, but I do a lot of civil stuff too.
So a lot of civil stuff.
Well, 3 of my business partners solely do civil stuff, and I am the 4th partner. I will do the trials and the mediations. I don't tend to do the daily grind of it.
Mm-hmm. So tell me something. Are you still visiting the Rockets game every night?
No, once. So in April or March of last year, iHeart offered me a 7 p.m. show.
Uh-huh.
And obviously most of, the majority of the Rockets games are during the week. And Tillman actually jacked up my prices a little bit. And it gave me an opportunity. I'm a football guy. Okay. My wife's the basketball one in the family. And we had the tickets right behind the visitors bench. And it gave me an excuse not to renew. So we're not, we didn't renew this year. We haven't even been to a game yet. We've been traveling so much, but we did for years, and I love the Rockets.
So you said traveling too much. So where have you been?
Well, just this past weekend, I was in New York. Me and you might remember him. There was a comedian that was on MTV, had a game show called Remote Control. Then he was the, the weekend update guy on Saturday Night Live, a guy named Colin Quinn. Him and I did a charity benefit for St. Jude's and Tunnel to Towers, where the 2 of us bartended at this bar in Tribeca in New York, and all day Sunday. I haven't bartended since I was 19, 20 years old, so it's been a long time. But I was pouring drinks. We raised a bunch of money for St. Jude's, which St. Jude is a beautiful charity. And Tunnel to Towers, actually, Stevens, fireman gets off of work on 9/11, gets home to New Jersey, hears about it, grabs his gear, runs through the tunnel, and actually dies saving people in the towers. It's a great charity. It's a great foundation. Very low administrative costs. When I look to work with a charity, you got to look at the numbers, right? And what St. Jude's, they're just amazing. What they do for children with cancer, and a lot of people don't realize, and they provide the medical care the rest of their lives. But Tunnel to Tower is a great 9/11 organization. There's a lot of charities that are set up for the benefit of the people that set up the charity, but not this one. This one just really does a lot for those who lost their primary, caregivers, their fathers and mothers in that horrible tragedy.
So how much money did y'all raise?
I haven't got the exact total yet because I just bartended. It was actually put on by the bar there. They do it every year. And Colin, his former co-host, was a New York police officer who then retired and went into the media. He was on the news in New York. He passed away, and Colin actually called me and asked me to step in and start co-hosting with him because me and Mike had a similar background. I was a police officer, and now I do the news on Fox, and I have the radio show.
So you said news on Fox. We see you a lot on the Face Off and. Also, I've seen you on Isaiah Factor several times. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, you got to reach back a little bit further to radio. So I was a judge, and I was sitting on the bench one day, and I originally was not on social media. I was actually at Harvard at the law school when they set up the Facebook at the college, and I just thought, well, that's stupid. And I never really embraced it for years. And then at a football game, maybe in 2013 or 14, at a Texans game, I'm there. It's me, my wife, and Bun B, and his wife, Queenie, right? And Queenie was making fun of me for not having an Instagram. Mm-hmm. And, I do good work. I'm a very good lawyer. So work's never been a problem. But I didn't realize how a robust social media presence actually can increase, especially as an entrepreneur, as a business person. So I set up an Instagram, then it led to a Facebook, then it led to a Twitter. I actually killed my Twitter a few months ago because I got sick of all the arguing, and I just restarted it. But on Facebook, I got in an argument. There were two guys, one who considered himself a socialist and one who considered himself a libertarian, having this extremist ideological argument on Facebook. And I only knew the socialist. He was a local comedian. And I waited in. I was bored on the bench waiting for a trial to start in my robe. And I waited in and said, y'all are both idiots. Y'all are both morons. There is a more center position that's reasonable instead of this extremism. Mm-hmm. And the right-wing fella asked me to come do his radio show. And he had just a Saturday show at the time. He's now the co-host of a show that's syndicated throughout the South. And this is probably 4 or 5 years ago. We got in a big argument. And it led to him asking me to come back and him asking me to come back. And it kind of snowballed into me co-host. He went from midnights on Saturday to midnights Monday through Friday. And then they gave me a show on Saturday. And then they gave me a late night show. And now I've got a 7 p.m. and 11 p.m. show. And I think my TV stuff is kind of an offshoot from the radio. My radio show is it's on conservative talk radio, but it's very different. I don't consider myself liberal or conservative. I kind of reject being put in an ideological box. And it led to Isaiah asking me to do The Factor, and I ended up doing The Factor a couple times a week for a long time. And then Fox asked me to start doing the Face Off with Quanell, and that's kind of snowballed, and it's a lot of fun. Radio's great, TV's great too.
TV's great. So are you doing the Quanell thing every day?
Well, what we do typically, so initially it was on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5:45 and 9:45, and we would record 2 on Monday for Monday and Wednesday, and then 1 on Friday. Now, Jack Abernathy at Fox has put a lot of capital and time into this new Fox Soul, which is an African-American oriented like Fox News channel that just debuted probably 4 weeks ago. And Isaiah Carey there was only, I think, 4 or 5 hours of programming right now, and it's only on like Dish Network and Apple TV. But obviously the goal, like any TV station, is to expand it into a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week channel on all the cable. So Isaiah's on there, and they asked to include us there. And, of course, they didn't want to take us off the nightly news as well because the ratings have been gangbusters since, Quanell lost his original partner to cancer, who's also a guy that was on my radio station, Matt Patrick. And they'd fluttered between, like, I think 4 or 5 co-hosts that just didn't work out, right? You've got to have the right temperament to argue with Quanell.
Yeah.
And, when I started in April, it all of a sudden picked back up, and it's done very well. So we're on the regular news on Monday and Wednesday, and then we're in the Isaiah Factor on Wednesday and Friday. And we'll record them, like we recorded 3 yesterday. We're recording 2 on Friday and 2 on Wednesday. 2 next Monday. It just depends when they want us to come in, and it doesn't really take that long for us to scream at each other. But the backgrounds are different, and the studio setup is different for Quanell and me versus Quanell and me and Isaiah. But it's a lot of fun, and some of them got some real traction, millions of views.
So let me ask you a question. You have your radio show going on, your TV show going on, and a very busy practice.
Right.
How you juggle all this?
I have really good lawyers that work with me. Right before we started this podcast, I was texting with one. He needs me to come tomorrow, but I'm also supposed to be at iHeart in the morning, so I'm going to have to juggle that and get to both. Just get up real early and get to the courthouse early and hopefully get out quick enough. I don't get a whole lot of rest. But for me, radio and TV it's still a hobby. I make a little money from the radio, but not nearly enough to supplement or replace my practices. And I've got, a kid in California and a kid that wants to move to New York City. You know that. You've got a beautiful family and children yourself. They can be expensive.
Very expensive.
And, so until that happens, I did have an interesting experience. I was on The Breakfast Club, which is a nationally syndicated hip-hop talk show, with one of my clients, a hip-hop artist of some note who had shot a home invader.
Yes.
And it led to me having conversations with the host of that show, Charlemagne, and his TV production team. So I've signed a production deal to shoot a pilot with them. We've pitched it to NBC in New York at 30 Rock, and we're supposed to be pitching this to some other networks. Now, if I got a deal like that, where I could replace all of my income from lawyering, that'd be nice. I'd give it all up. But until then, it's more of a hobby than anything.
So then let's take a step back over here and ask you, what do you like, radio and TV, better than being a lawyer?
I love being a police officer, right? But I grew up in a single parent household, and although I knew my dad growing up, and he we'd see him every other weekend in the summer. It was mostly just me and my mom and my sister, and there wasn't a whole lot of money. And I never wanted my kids to not have the nice stuff that other kids had, which was a reality for me when I was a kid, right? My mom did the best she could, but we just didn't have a whole lot of nice stuff. I mean, that's a part of our life. So for me, once I got married, I had a kid, I decided I got to do more than being a police officer. So I started going to law school, working night shift patrol, going to law school during the day. And then I thought, well, that was it. And then my first lawyer job, I actually made less money than I did as a police officer because I was a briefing attorney for the state of Texas. It's a prestigious job. You help judges write appellate opinions. And I was at the top of my class, but it was just like, I'm making less money. And then I made no money, went back to school and, got my master's of law at Harvard. But that led to a very high paying job. At the time, the highest paying law firm in the country, worked in their Dallas office. And I thought when I took that job, that was it, right? You just do that. You work to become partner. I was in the commercial litigation section, just lots of money, right? Went from, a row house owned by Harvard University that was very tiny and the four of us cramped in there to a giant house in Plano with a swimming pool and new cars for everybody, and went to Disney World. I actually skipped my Harvard graduation and took the kids to Disney World. But when I started practicing, I found out that I had far less freedom than I did as a police officer. I was working 6 or 7 days a week, but I was working on cases that made me miserable. Right. It was like lead smelters suing Superfund reinsurers on pollution cases. And it was just not for a lot of document production. And I realized that I wasn't happy, and I was never seeing my kids because I worked all the time. And one of the more senior attorneys at the firm asked me to leave with him and he said, I'll put up all the money. We'll be 50-50 partners. And, entrepreneurialism is difficult. And when you haven't done it before, and, I've been a policeman and a briefing attorney and associated at a big firm, you are not cognizant of all the risks associated with it. So I left with this attorney, and we, got half a floor in downtown Dallas. We had clients. It was all going well, but it didn't seem to be like the money was there. And he was very cagey about the money. We had hired a bunch of attorneys, some of them that I knew, right? One of them left the Court of Appeals to come work for us. And one day he just fired a couple of them without talking to me. And one of them was a friend of mine. And it led to me realizing that although we were supposed to be 50-50 partners, we weren't. And we dissolved the firm. And then I took the office in San Antonio, and I opened an office here in Houston. And then even the attorney, the one that I stood up for, kind of stabbed me in the back. We're friends again now. But, I learned a very powerful lesson when you start businesses. If you're the brain, which I am, you have to demand control, and you have to not relinquish it for any reason to anyone. And you have to watch every penny that comes in and comes out. And not that you have to be a dictator, because I pay my employees very well, and some of them do their job, and if they don't do their job, they go. But that's the whole process.
So Charles, even though you're a lawyer, you're also a businessman,
right?
So tell me something. You're on Instagram,
right?
You're on Facebook, and you're on social media, and there's always this chatter on social media: be your own boss.
Right.
Don't work for anybody to make their dreams come true, and quit your job, dream big.
It's a lot easier to say than do, especially when you have responsibility.
What do you think about that?
I think for me it worked out. It didn't work out immediately. I mean, it was terrifying for a couple of years. I quit a very, very high paying job with a wife and 2 kids, and you see yourself, how am I going to pay the rent for the building? How am I going to do this? And then, I went to Harvard. Why am I feeling like this? Now, after a couple of years, it started to snowball. You do good work, and it's going to get better. It's led to and I'm not just a lawyer now. I mean, I do TV and stuff, but I also own a financial advisor recruiting business. I like doing new things, but there's a lot of risk associated. And if you don't have it's real easy. Like, it's real easy for people to see to me, like tonight, although I have all these things I'm doing, I don't think I work as hard as I used to. When I was at the office, 10, 12 hours a day, I pay other people to do that now. And the people that I pay to do it, and I pay them very, very well. I think sometimes you get frustrated because they don't think it's fair, right? Mm-hmm. But they never went through the years of uncertainty and the frightening times to get to where I got, right? And I think people just see the end result and think you just woke up like that. And there's no entrepreneur that just woke up like that. And unless somebody got really, really lucky, most entrepreneurs, like myself, you fall flat on your face a couple times. You got to get dust it off. And then when it does start to work, then people are envious of it working. And it's just not that easy.
So is entrepreneurship for everybody?
I don't think so. I think there are some people that are.
You think so, or you don't believe?
I don't think so. I think there are some people that need the security and the structure of a steady job. Because if no one's telling you need to put 10 or 12 hours work a day to get something to work, a lot of people just aren't willing to do it. But if they have a boss or they have structure, they're going to do what they are supposed to do, right? You have to have a lot of motivation. And, frankly, some people don't. Some people also thrive more in a workplace environment, right? So no, I don't think it's for everybody.
Not everybody can just get up, take a shower, and get out of the house and go to work.
Right. And,
they just don't have the discipline.
Right. Well, it's not even, some people, they're just wired different, right? And some people can be very successful with a boss, but without a boss, they're just not motivated, or if there's not guaranteed income, right? Because when you start a business, you're working for free a lot for a long time, and it's not till it really takes off.
Slaving.
Right, and you're the one not taking a check to make sure you can pay your employees. I'm sure you went through that at some point early on.
Several years.
Yeah, and you're not making any money. You're paying all these people. You're paying all these bills, and sometimes you're like, why am I doing this? I'll just go take a job downhill.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, what are your biggest regrets?
There was a time when I was working in a firm, and even when I'd started my practice, I missed a lot of stuff with my kids. Now, when they got a little bit older, I didn't miss anything in like junior high and high school, no games, no anything. And I've always taken the time to take them on vacation. I think I could have, I think I was a little hard on my kids. I was the kind of dad that if they won the game and I didn't think they'd try hard enough, I'd fuss at them. I didn't care if they won or lost. I just wanted to try. I'd fuss at my kids for an A-. This is your job. And it's thanks because I kind of had a laissez-faire parenting experience. I was just doing what I wanted to do at a very young age, which I don't think is good, right? I might have been overstructured, but maybe I could have been nicer to them. I mean, they've turned out to be pretty successful. I wish I'd have spent more time with my wife, instead of working. But on the flip side, I had the financial wherewithal, to pay, when my daughter got into this medical school in California, her rent is more than I made a month when I was a policeman. And, it's nice to be able to do those things for them.
Sometimes, and some of us regret stuff that we didn't do. I think I can probably share the same regret as you do. And how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 47.
47. So you were born in Houston? Or
No, actually, no, I grew up in Austin. My parents got divorced when I was like 4 or 5, and my dad moved to Corpus for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. My grandfather was a petroleum engineer. I think he was a VP at the end for Coastal. And my grandfather got my dad a job after he finished college at Cameron Iron Works. So my dad moved to Corpus to work there for a couple of years, and moved here when I was a kid. So I would spend every other weekend and most of the summer in Houston all my life, right? Okay. I grew up with my mom, and then my mom and stepdad were moving to California, and I decided I didn't want to go to California. So I moved into Jersey Village with my dad, and I went to high school at Jersey Village for a few months.
Falcons, huh?
I think so, but I only went a few months, my junior year. And my dad got transferred to a camera facility to be the plant manager or the sales manager in Ville Platte, Louisiana. So we moved to Ville Platte. That's how I ended up going to LSU. But I moved to Houston when I was 20, became a policeman at 21, and with the exception of when I was going to Harvard or when I lived in Dallas for a couple of years, I've lived in Houston my entire adult life.
So I've seen on your Instagram, you're a pretty big foodie.
I do eat. You can look at me and tell I'm a pretty big foodie too. I'm no thin little thing at 6'8", 300 pounds. I do like eating a lot.
So let me ask you, you said 6'8", 300 pounds. Right. Did you play anything?
I played basketball. I could have played D2 and D3 basketball. I was actually in the honors program at LSU. I thought I was going to walk on, and I was not big enough. It was Shaquille's freshman year, Stanley Roberts' sophomore year. They had 4 7-footers. It was crazy.
So you were right there when Shaquille was playing?
Yeah, well, no, we were freshmen together. I didn't play. Freshmen together? Yeah, he was a real nice guy. I haven't talked to him in, I don't know, years and years and years.
But you met him, but y'all went to school together.
Yes.
Knew each other in school.
Yeah, he actually used to come in the bar that I bartended. He was a really, really nice guy. Zero and him just recorded a song together. So
Really?
Yeah. And so apparently they're going to shoot a video
Well,
soon.
Zero said he was going to record a song for me. I'm still waiting for it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that man, he's the hardest working man in hip hop. He works every single day.
Well, next time you talk to Zero, tell him Sam say, "Where's the Where Low Prices Live" song at?
I'll see him for dinner at Nobu tonight. I'll bring it up. I
All
promise.
right, make sure you do.
Yes, sir.
So when in Houston, you say you're going to Nobu tonight, but usually when you're around town, you go, maybe you and your wife or you with a friend. What is a go-to restaurant?
I think that's kind of a fluid issue. I think a lot of it depends on where you're at what time. Like right now, because I know that one of the global managers for Nobu, I've been really, when Uchi changed their menu and moved all the good stuff to just their Uchiko Austin location, I stopped going there. Nobu opened up. I'd been real Nobu focused when I wasn't looking for a steakhouse, right? A few weeks ago, I tried Kato Robata for the first time. And I would say their $18 steak skewers, which are American Wagyu, are as good or better than the $170 A5 at Vic and Anthony's.
Really?
That's probably my favorite dish right now is the Kato Robata steak skewers. My favorite dining experiences are typically at Ronnie Killen's restaurants, right? I enjoy Killen's STQ, which is on Voss, which his chef de cuisine is Teddy Lopez, a Hispanic guy who is Japanese trained chef who's doing grilled steaks on open flame. I love the Killen Steakhouse in Pearland. I'm excited about his comfort food location he's about to eat. And with Killen's, there's always a consistency. And like for a long time, I would say his fried shrimp sliders, which are just a beer menu item, but they'll serve them to me whenever, would be the best thing in Houston. Right now, though, this day in 2019, I would say the Kato Robata steak skewers. They're $18.
Really? I gotta go try that.
And they are better than the A5 Wagyu at B&B, which I love, or Vic and Anthony's. Yeah, I can't say they're better than Ronnie steaks, because Ronnie steaks are great, but at $18, it's just like,
you can't beat it.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I like the STQ. I've been to STQ and I like it.
It's a little more casual, right?
It's a little more casual. I mean, it's not like a Steak 48 or a Master. What do you think about those two?
Steak 48, I think, is a little bit too clubby and loud, and I don't think they have when you've got your most expensive steak drowning in butter, I think you're hiding something, right? I don't love it. I know people that do, and I think the Phoenix Scottsdale location is better, but it's not, and I have friends that swear by it, but I don't really love it. A lot of times I go out to eat with Zero. We tried it a few times. Our regular place is the Palm. It's just a place that we both really enjoy. I don't love it. Mastro's, I will tell you, across the street from Mastro's in the parking lot of Post Oak is that new Willie G's. I never liked Willie G's. When it was on Post Oak, I don't really love the one in Galveston. I think what that chef there at that Willie G's is doing is amazing. And
I agree. I agree with you.
I love it. Mastro's, I think it's very good, but there are other steakhouses I would pick before it. But I love Willie G's. I've been to Willie G's maybe 8 times in the last 3 months.
I'll pick Steak 48 over Mastro's. Now, what about, have you been to Chris Shepard's
Georgia James?
Georgia James.
Yeah, I like it. I think, he's got some unique cuts. I think Chris Shepard, it's more experiential than, I think Chris does exciting stuff that sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't. What I don't like is with Underbelly, that was there before, you would find a favorite thing on the menu and then it would be gone the next time you went, right? Whereas Ronnie, you'll find a favorite thing and it'll always be there. So I really like the UB Preserve. A good friend of mine, Katie McLean, is the manager there. It's exciting stuff, but I'm not an exciting eater, right? Yeah. I know what I like, and I like stuff done really, really well. So although Georgia James, their wood fire apple pie with cheddar cheese ice cream, one of the best desserts in the city. Yeah, it's really, really good. Yeah.
I think my wife's been wanting to go to Georgia James. And
it's worth it. It's really a beautiful restaurant, and the service is really, really strong.
Yeah, right? I like it. I've been there one time, and I really like it. Yeah. As far as what does Charles likes to drink, Charles Adams?
I like beer, but it bloats me out too much, and I'm not like a fancy beer drinker. I'll just drink any kind of beer. I'm not, I grew up in Austin paying people $5 to go get me beer at the 7-Eleven when I was 14. I wasn't picky. The martini at the Palm with the blue cheese stuffed olives is probably my favorite drink, but I'm an unusual guy in that if I'm driving, I don't have anything to drink, right? And if I'm not driving, I might drink everything in the world. Yeah. So I'm driving mostly. So there's a whole lot of iced tea and Arnold Palmer's for me. And honestly, I feel a lot better the next day when all I did was drink iced tea.
For sure.
Yeah.
100%. Right. Let's go back to your, when you started your practice, when you were in partnership. What do you think you wish you would have done differently when you started?
I think I should have structured, and I should have made sure that I had more control over the money and what was going on. That original partner, years later, ended up being sentenced to 25 years in prison for stealing money from clients. Wow. So it worked out, I'll be honest, it worked out for him at first, right? When we broke up, he did really, really well. He had a side business, which he kept out of the practice, and it looks like he was doing it while he was at the firm, which is against the rules, where he was evicting Native Americans out of their trailers all over the country, okay? I didn't know about it, right?
Wow.
And it seems like a pretty evil practice, and because he had some small amount of Native American in him, he was admitted to all these tribal courts. And instead of traveling to the tribal courts in New Mexico, Arizona, Oklahoma, he would always send a motion saying, I have a conflict, and ask for a telephone hearing. Well, he got busted lying on one of these motions. So they disbarred him. Well, he's making a whole lot of money doing that. So he loses that monthly nut. So what he starts doing apparently was not paying his personal injury clients. But this is a guy who went from being at a firm to having a big quarter horse ranch, a bunch of Ferraris. He'd drive his quarter horses around with an 18-wheeler, big giant spread outside of Dallas, just made billboards all over Dallas. In fact, Tony Busby's phrase, just win, that was my old partner's phrase first. And then he went to prison. Busby started using it. But this guy, just was stealing. I mean, he actually, I think, stole more money than the Texas State Bar had in their fund to repay clients who had their money stolen, like $3.2 million. In the middle of his trial, he pled guilty open, and the judge gave him 25 years. He went from being one of the biggest known lawyers in Dallas to 25 years.
Do you think that was a harsh conviction?
No, I think you steal $3.2 million from your client. Lawyers, just like bad cops, bad lawyers that can't be trusted with their client's money deserve prison. And if you stand that, and there has to be some, I actually think it was a fair result, because a lot of times you'll see people that are poor or people, people of color who get these disproportionate results for smaller crimes. But this was a wealthy, established white male lawyer in Dallas, and I think he paid the appropriate price.
So what do you think? I don't know. Is this a myth or a fact? But lawyers don't sue other lawyers.
Oh, no, I think lawyers will sue other lawyers. I think that was
very, very little, right?
I think it was a long time ago. First of all, a lot of lawyers will turn down those cases because it's a very high bar, right? It's a legal malpractice. For like in the criminal world, you have to establish your innocence before your lawyer can be. That's the Hughes and Lewis case from the Texas Supreme Court. So sometimes you might feel like the lawyer's saying no, but the lawyer's really saying, look, we can't make the case. I mean, I would have no qualms suing a bad lawyer. I think it's also, in yesteryear, cops would cover up for bad cops. I think as there's more communication, there's more documentation, emails, text messages, cameras, I think people are more willing to.
So, you're saying there's more communication, emails, cameras. What do you think about now everybody can broadcast anything? It's just right here on the phone.
I think there's positives and negatives. I think that social media makes the world smaller, right? I think social media led for me to be on the radio, then led to me to be on TV. And I think if you take the positives and focus on the positives, it can be a great thing. I think especially like Twitter, I think it's a toxic cesspool, and I think it's having a tremendous impact on the American politics because politicians on the left and the right it seems that they're listening more to the people that are shrieking and shouting than those are actually getting up and going to work and paying taxes and keeping this thing afloat, right? And I think we've incentivized, this fake martyrdom or victimization. So I think there are some really bad outcomes from social media, but I think there's some really positive ones too. Like, there are people in my life that I hadn't seen for years, and I got on Facebook and we began communicating, and that can be good and it can be bad, I think largely for me it's been positive. It's been great for my business. My Instagram's that Big Angry Law, and it's not really a business Instagram, right? You see lawyers or real estate agents or guys that have furniture stores that will have an Instagram solely focused on their business, and that's just boring, right? My Instagram is clearly my favorite social media.
Well, we met through Instagram.
Right. I try to just have an authentic snapshot of my life. And sometimes it pisses my wife off, right? A few weeks ago, we were at a Astros playoff game, and somebody messaged me that someone had set up a Bumble account with a bunch of my pictures off my Instagram of my wife and family, but a fake Bumble account for my wife. And my wife freaked out about it. She was still upset. The guy didn't screenshot it, so she made me set up a Bumble account, and she's scrolling through looking for it, and it never showed up because she had said something about it on her Instagram, which is private. But for a couple of weeks, she's like, I don't want you putting any pictures up of me. And my response was, if someone's going to make a catfish account and use your pictures, it means you're good looking. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
You know, she's had some bad things on social media, just people being ugly, right?
Yeah.
And people are ugly to me, I don't care. I'm just ugly right back, right? Whereas she's a woman, and it hurts her feelings. And if people say untrue, ugly things about you. So I think it gives a pulpit to the trolls and the horrible people, but I think it can also, it affords activism and, advertising for your business. If you don't make it seem like overt advertising, there's a lot of positive things about it.
There's a lot of positive. Matter of fact, that Bumble thing, someone told me someone had catfished me.
Oh yeah,
and they're like, "Yeah, it's Bumble." I'm like, well, "What is Bumble?"
Yeah, no, neither of us knew what it was until the guy explained it. That's just a testament to how sexy you are, Sammy. It should be sexy Sammy, not super Sammy, and
that's it. Once in a while, I have that sexy come out of me.
That's right.
So, tell me, as an attorney, if you want to debunk like some kind of stereotype.
Well,
what would you do?
I don't really think you can debunk stereotypes because can I curse on here?
Sure, okay. Sure.
Most attorneys are assholes. I mean, that's the thing. Most attorneys are looking to bleed every client they come out of the room dry. I'm not saying all attorneys because there are a bunch of noble attorneys too. Yeah. But I do think that a lot of people condemn criminal defense lawyers. In fact, a lot of my friends, right? I still have a lot of police friends, right? And they're like, how can you represent people? Criminal defense lawyers are an integral, even ones, you're going to represent guilty people. You're also going to represent innocent people, right? But they are an integral part of the process. And the process fails when you have mediocre ones, when you have ones that don't care, when you have ones that aren't zealous, because there are innocent people accused of crimes, right? I mean, we've seen this whole hullabaloo about Rodney Reed, and I kind of have mixed feelings because I've dived pretty deep into that and the other crimes he's alleged to have committed. But Texas did put to death a guy in the mid-2000s, Cameron Todd Willingham, who was absolutely innocent. And everyone agrees at this point he was absolutely innocent, and they trumped up evidence against him. And that's horrifying, right? And, I mean, so I do think that people blame criminal defense attorneys and say, how can you represent those people? But, John Adams, our second president, he stood up and said, I'm going to represent these redcoats when no one would represent him, and actually won and exonerated someone who were accused of the Boston Massacre. And he was vilified in Boston at first. But then our founding fathers recognized the fact that it was incredibly brave for this man who's looking at a mob threatening his life, threatening his family to serve, right? And he ended up, being the first vice president and the second president. So I think we should recognize, and that's not to diminish the importance of prosecutors or police officers, right? I do think in America right now, there's a loud shouting voice condemning police and prosecutors, and there are bad police and bad prosecutors, but the overwhelming majority of them are public servants that are protecting us from the predators of the world. A lot of people don't want to acknowledge that predators and monsters exist, but there are plenty of them out there.
So I want to talk about that. I'm glad you brought that subject up. Yeah. And I wanted to talk about that since you were a police officer.
Yes, sir.
Honestly, police officer, they keep us safe.
Right.
There's a majority of good police officers.
That's good and bad.
But there's some bad ones. Yeah. And then there's some that are scared. And then there's some that are just assholes.
Right.
Right. And when I say they're scared, I mean, I'm not a police officer. I've never been over there, but I mean,
there are times that it's terrifying.
I can just imagine that when you make a regular traffic stop and you don't know who's in the car.
You often get complacent there, right? But there are times when you're out there alone at 2 a.m. and some really bad stuff happening, and you have to be a robot. Like, you have to push through it. I mean, we've seen stuff like Philando Castile, like Tatiana, and I kind of hate that I don't remember her name. I think it was Jefferson, the woman who was shot through her window in Dallas, where cops just make horrible decisions, and because they were startled. And I will tell you, I'll tell you a real story. So there's a bodega on 8th Street north of Spencer that gets robbed, right? Maybe like 11:45 p.m. And it's like 98, 99. It might have been a little earlier, but it was a purple Geo was the car. It left occupied 3 times by Hispanic males that had robbed it, and they gave a partial plate. So I'm zooming down Avenue A with my lights off looking for the guys, and I see a purple Geo Metro with the same partial plate occupied 3 times. And I swoop around, I pull it over, I go up on it, and I'm saying in English and Spanish, tell them to put their hands where I can see them. And I'm talking to the driver, and just out of the corner of my eye, I see a glint of metal in the back, the one guy in the back seat's hand. And I wheel around on him, and my gun was not out at that point. I had to make sure I had the right people, and everything looked like it was the right people. And I wheel around and pull my gun out, and I say, Manos arrive, Manos arrive. And the guy, it was a close. I've had guys with guns pointed at me. I've had guys trying to stab me. I had a guy hit me with a car. Didn't shoot any of them, didn't think about shooting any of them. They all would have been legitimate shootings, right? I just never wanted to kill someone. That was something that personally would horrify me if I had to do it. And I do think there are cops that look for an excuse to kill people. So I wheel around on him, and I've got my gun in my hand, and man, it's the closest I ever came to shooting someone in my life. And he was just trying to put a seatbelt on. And, it looked like a gun from the corner of my eye. Unfortunately, I realized what was going on before I shot him. And not moments later, another officer, Mike Powers, called out he had stopped another purple Geo Metro with the same plate that had the robbers in it. It wasn't even the right car.
Wow.
I mean, it's the anomaly,
It could have just gone real bad.
Right, and it would have been horrible. And, it takes the right person to be a police officer. You have to be calm and focused. And unfortunately, we don't really seem to have a good way to screen out the bad ones. But there are great ones. There are people that get up and risk their lives. I think a real problem with the function of policing in America is we're having them do the wrong things. Like, I think the focus of most police officers are the war on drugs, being a prohibition agent. I'm a kind of a radical, and I didn't fight the war on drugs when I was a cop. I'd just throw weed away left and right. I don't think we should. I think we should treat drug users like a medical issue, not a criminal issue. I don't think we should be fighting the war on drugs. It's this weird conundrum where we're telling citizens, we don't want you to use drugs because they'll ruin your life. And many will, like meth, heroin, opioids, they'll ruin your life. But we're saying we don't want you to be a drug user because they'll ruin your life. But if you're a drug user, we're going to ruin your life and make you a felon. And then you become unemployable. We also have officers writing tickets to balance municipal and county budgets, and that's a regressive tax. Our police officers should not be revenuers. They shouldn't be prohibition agents. They should only be focused on preventing and solving victim crimes, whether it's theft, whether it's someone being hurt. And in fact, right now we have a district attorney's office, not just here, but across the country, that are actually not addressing a lot of victim crimes because they're saying, like the Dallas DA said about a year ago, he wasn't going to prosecute low-level thefts. Well, who are the victims there? Typically, it's crime is racially and socioeconomically homogenous. So it's other people of color and other poor people, or it's business owners like yourself that, like the Midtown CVS, they were shaking a guy down, a homeless guy who apparently frequently went in there and stole stuff, right? And he was being obstructive, and I just happened to walk in after the gym, and I'm a big guy, so it was just 2 women working at CVS by themselves, and I just stood there and looked at him, and he dumped all his stuff and left. I'm like, why didn't y'all call the cops? I'm like, because they don't get out here in time, and if they do, they sometimes don't arrest, and that's crazy to me, because when I was a cop, if you got a shoplifting call, you went over there and arrested the guy, and we can't treat victim crimes like they're not crimes just because they're low level, because it just allows crime to snowball. But I just think we've focused our police energies on the wrong things.
And like I have several stores in Houston area, and the cops just don't come.
Right, and it puts you as a store owner to a point where either you've got to pay an officer to work an extra job there, just like so many neighborhoods in Houston have to pay officers to work their neighborhoods. Yeah. But that should be part of your tax. And that's the thing. We pay. We have so many officers doing things that aren't focused on public safety, and we should never. And I saw this as a presiding municipal judge. The city council would want to talk about the budget and how much money we're going to, and I would never listen. I'm like, no, that's not my job. My job is justice. Yeah. And they would get pissed off, but the mayor was a good mayor, and he would back me, right? But it's not that way in most cities. It's not that way in most towns, and they're reliant on the revenue generated by cops, and you just see horrible outcomes. Just today you saw the HPD officers in the Hardy Street raid got indicted by the FBI. Mm-hmm. And you have 2 citizens of Houston dead because the war on drugs and overzealous officers and trumped up evidence. And we just shouldn't have. I mean, if we legalized drugs and taxed them, think about what we could do for kids for all that money. Think of what we could do for addicts. But we could take that money and hospitalize them instead of throwing them in a prison. Because our prison system, and a lot of people don't care about that, is not safe, right? If you go into prison, you basically have to become a racist or a bigot. You have to pick a racial side based on your skin color, or you're going to be cannibalized by members of your own race or by members of other races and their gangs. And it's horrifying. So normal people, normal non-racist, good citizens or non-bigoted good citizens who get caught up with drugs go into prison not being a predator or a criminal. And they either go in there and become prey and get destroyed, or they become monsters themselves, because you can't do safe time in America. Nobody wants to talk about what we have to do to make our prisons safer and what we have to do to empty out our prisons of people that aren't predators, because they're like, oh, well, they're felons. We don't care. I mean, the whole paradigm is broken.
The whole thing. And, here, touch base again on this, where the cops don't come. Yeah, I'll give you a little story. Mm-hmm. We had a guy, one of our drivers, delivering. It was just an end table that was left from the regular truck. So he sent a shuttle van to go deliver this. Well, while the guy was at the customer's house, there was a whole bunch of kids and a lot of my gang members. It's in Southwest Houston. And that just surrounded the van. So the guy comes out and one of the kids pulled a gun on him and said, give me the keys. Well, he runs back inside the apartment.
Right.
And just stays there. So they call the cops. Then he turns around and calls his manager, and the manager calls me, and we all in 3-way. So we're like, okay, let's call the cops. So we called the cops. He's inside the apartment. It took the cops 54 minutes.
It's insane
to show up.
It's insane. That's a priority 1 active aggravated robbery.
Right.
And that's something that a cop should have immediately turned his overheads on and his siren and flown there.
54 minutes.
Flown there.
Yeah.
It's like, so in the 90s when people would break into cars and we get a call, we'd immediately go over there and take a report. Then we'd turn off our lights at night and we'd look for somebody rolling around on a bicycle with a backpack. It's usually like a 35-year-old dude on a BMX bike that he stole from some kid, riding around with a backpack with all the stuff he stole out of cars. And we'd look for that guy, right? I had my car broken into the Heights like 8:30 in the evening at a restaurant. Smashed the back window of my Escalade. Took my radio computer bag, very distinctive backpack. It took them 4 hours to get that. I finally gave up and went home, and they came there like 4 hours later because I called again and insisted, right? But I drove around for a while looking for him, and I didn't have a gun. And my wife was like, what are you going to do if you find him? I said, I want to jump out and beat him up and take my crap back, because I knew I'd recognize my backpack. It was a Gumball 3000 backpack. And, she got mad and said, no, you didn't go home. So we just went home. But there's no response, and we get lied to. I'm sorry. I think Acevedo has done a horrible job with the culture for the Houston Police Department. I just think there needs to be significant changes in the way we police in Houston.
And it's not, and I mean, I try to stay off politics, but, I'm just going to, since we're on the subject, I want to talk about it. I mean, I feel like we're 4th biggest city, soon to be 3rd biggest city. And the crime rate used to be pretty low.
Right.
It's pretty shitty now.
Well, and there's some masking going on, right? Yeah. So they're not calling things certain crimes to try to mask them, even though they fit the elements. The DA's office saying, no, we're not going to take the charge, or the cops aren't coming out to the report. So that's, instead of suppressing crime by actually fighting crime, they're suppressing crime by tweaking the statistics, which is insane.
Yeah, and not pressing charges.
Right.
Or pressing charges for bullshit stuff.
Right, exactly.
And then, our city, the flood.
You're right.
I mean, that's stupid. I mean, which may impact us into a couple of different things. And I know you must have an opinion on that.
I mean, I do, in that we shouldn't be Lena Hidalgo and the, you've seen a lot of cronyism. I like Sylvester Turner. His opponent, Tony Busby's a friend of mine too. But I like Sylvester a lot. Even if his old law partner was fit for the job, you should never pick your ex-partner. It just smacks of cronyism. But it seems like the whole goal is to pick and choose based on demographics and socioeconomics who they help. Where personally, I don't think that should have been the focus on any of these Harvey funds. I think the focus of the Harvey funds should have been almost exclusively to redo sewer systems and floodways and mechanisms to prevent flooding for all citizens, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to saying, oh, I'm going to give you money to rebuild your house. I'm going to give you money to rebuy your stuff. And I'm going to, basically picking and choosing amongst people who decided to, for whatever reason, not to have the appropriate insurance. And I don't think that's what I don't think it should be handouts to people. I don't think it should be welfare, poor or rich, because there's plenty of wealthy people that have their hand out for hurricane relief. And personally, I think it should all go to civic projects to make the city safer for the citizens as opposed to individuals. And none of it's going anywhere. It's just all stagnating.
It's just stagnant. Squeaky wheel got the grease and the rest is just sitting over there.
Right.
And as a businessman, it concerns me because if your city keeps flooding, people don't want to come over here, even though there's a lot of other appeal to it. But people are coming over here at a slower rate,
right,
which can impact us in the future as a negative growth.
I don't know if I sold furniture, I'd think, well, at least I get to sell a bunch of people new furniture. But
we want new people coming.
No,
to
I know,
town,
I know.
So, tell me something. As a businessman, as a lawyer, as a father, what is a couple of things you would like to talk about for future generation, a younger person who's listening to this?
I think there's a lot of people that think things should be easy, and there is an unfairness. I mean, obviously there's unfairness in a capitalist. So some people are born rich with a silver spoon, and some people are born poor. But you can lose wealth real quick, right? But I think a lot of it has to do with the breakdown in households. And I'm not saying people shouldn't get divorced, right? I think once you have children, you should put the needs of your children ahead of your personal feelings a lot. But even if you're divorced, it doesn't mean you can get away with not parenting. And there's so many, especially men, when people like to make it race, it's not a race thing. It's across racial boundaries. It's across socioeconomic boundaries. There's nothing defining it. Just men that don't want to participate in their children's lives. And there are a lot of parents that want to continue to live their life however they want and wonder why their kid turns out the way they did when they didn't supervise them. And there's a lot of parents that want to play the best friend enabler, right? And I'll readily admit both my kids probably don't like me, right? They like doing stuff with me because I take them to do nice stuff, and there's a lot of carrot with the stick. But there's a very sharp stick, and I'm not talking like beating them or corporal punishment. I'm just talking about me getting really angry when they don't achieve the goals I set out for them to achieve, when I give them everything they can do that will allow them to succeed. My daughter now, she's the president of her class in medical school. She's in her second year. It's probably all downhill from her. It's hard, right? But there were so many times, like when she was applying to Harvard, she didn't want to apply. She'd already gone into Yale and a couple of those schools, and she's like, oh, no, I got to do these essays. I don't want to do it. But I knew she wanted to go to Harvard, so I just screamed at her till she did it. And in fact, where she's in medical school now, the out-of-state admission rate is less than 1%. It's less than 1% of the applicants from out of California. And she had to do like 11 secondary essays, and she didn't want to do it. She was at our house, and she was just like, oh, Dad, it's a lot of work. And I just screamed at her till she did it. Plenty of times in undergrad when she wanted to quit classes like organic and everything because they were just too hard. But I was like, look, you wanted to be a doctor since you were 5 years old. Achieve that. Then if you don't want to do it, don't do it, right? But for me, I decided I want to be a lawyer. My mom was actually in law school at UT, and, being a single parent, a lot of it's really hard, and she never finished. And I know that weighed on her whole life. So for me, I always knew I was going to go to law school. I wanted to be a policeman too, but I always knew I was going to go to law school. And it's the thing. You asked me earlier if I like being a lawyer or TV better. I love being a lawyer when I initially started my own practice, and I was real passionate about it. I'm a great trial lawyer. I've been doing it for a long time. And I think doing new stuff, like you started this new podcast, right? I think it's doing new stuff that it makes you feel alive, even if you're not making a whole lot of money doing it, right? Like right now, I'm not making a whole lot of money doing TV and radio. I'm making some, but not a tremendous amount. And I kind of equate it to being like an actor or a singer or anything. You got to go get your feet wet. It might take years. And if something breaks off, syndicated radio guys make a whole lot of money. If you get on a national TV show, you make a whole lot of money. If that happens, great. But as long as I'm enjoying doing it, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. At least I'm having fun.
At least having fun. So what would be your message to somebody who's listening to this?
I think there's a lot of forces in America. I think there's forces on the right that are trying to prevent people from having opportunity. And there's forces on the left that are trying to convince Americans that there's no opportunity to achieve and you need the government to provide your solution. And I think they're both wrong, right? I think we need to do better, like with public schools. I think we need to do far better. They're failing so many students, and some of it's to blame. The unions are to blame for stagnating them. And then some of them are, the budget's to blame, and people don't want to, suburban people don't want to have their tax dollars going to inner city or urban schools. And I think it's completely wrong, because I think you have to have a well-educated populace, right? So I think we need to do much more to make sure that poor Americans have the opportunities to work hard and achieve. But there's a reason we have 100,000 people coming into this country illegally every month, right? It's because the truth is, if you work hard, you can achieve here, right? And there's a lot of forces on the left that are trying to convince Americans, oh, well, you can't win in America anymore. Now, you just got to work real hard. And if you work real hard, you're probably going to win. Now, of course, some weird fluke or something could happen that you don't. But we have to stop trying to convince Americans that America isn't exceptional. Have we had problems? Was Jim Crow horrifying? Was slavery horrifying? Yeah. But at every point, we were the best. Every point, and we can't decontextualize history. And while we need to keep making America better, and we need to recognize the problems, it's still the best game out there, and we need to celebrate it, and we need to all just work harder, period, and stop listening to the people that say that working hard isn't the solution or merit. There's a war on merit in academia, that demographic considerations should be more important than achievement, and that's just counterintuitive, because it's about the work ethic. It's about being willing to do what other people aren't. It's about beating people. And some people don't like that, but socialism in a vacuum sounds great. But the reality of socialism is Venezuela. It's the richest country in the world, because Venezuela has more natural resources than anyone. And I'm especially into, my dad was actually born there, of American parents, but he grew up there. He was born and grew up in Caracas, in Maracaibo. They took this super rich nation, and socialism turned it into a famine-starved horror story.
Bad.
It's heartbreaking.
Horrible. Now, let me ask you, what is in Charles' future? I know TV and radio is. Is a book in your future?
I don't know if I enjoy writing. I don't know if I ever will have. I do blogs every once in a while. I don't know if I'll ever have the time to write a book. Mm-hmm. I'm hopeful that, so I pitched. So when Charlemagne contacted me, I didn't know him, and he came to me with some political talk show ideas, and I pushed back with a kind of I was a judge for 9 years, and I love Judge Judy, right? And I pushed back with kind of a disruption of the Judge Judy format, and that's what we pitched to NBC, and hopefully we're going to pitch it to ABC and some other networks. I'd love to see that happen. Whether it happens with Charlemagne or with other people, I'd love a judge show. That would just be fun for me. Mm-hmm. But I can't say I see it in the future, because it's such a rarity to get a national TV show. But I would love for that to happen. Honestly, as long as I'm making enough money to, I'm about to take the wife and kids to Europe for a couple of weeks. As long as I'm making enough money to do the things that I want to do for my family, I'm happy.
Where in Europe y'all headed to?
We're going to go to London and then Paris and then back to London. We're going to do Christmas and New Year's over there. I haven't picked out the dates yet. I bought the plane tickets, but I have not, I haven't decided where we're staying. Are you
staying at a hotel? Airbnb?
Oh, yeah, definitely. In a hotel, definitely.
In a hotel.
We had a bad experience. I'd rented an Airbnb in Malibu. I made a bunch of money a few years back, a beach house in Malibu. Uh-huh. It was a piece of crap. So I don't mess with Airbnb anymore.
We stayed at Airbnb in London.
Yeah.
It was great.
Oh, really?
It was really great. We stayed in Lambeth.
Okay.
And this house was amazing. It was right down the street from Eye of London.
Okay, well, maybe I'll have to take a look at it.
I'll recommend you the house. You can take a look at it. It was great. Everybody had their own room. Everybody had their own restrooms.
I might have to check it out. I'm always a little bit suspect of that, but that might be the way to go. Thanks for the advice.
It's right across the train station. Right down the street from the train station.
Oh, wow. So very centrally located.
Yeah. You're right there from the Eye of London. And from Eye of London to Big Ben is about 3 minutes walk.
Oh, wow.
So maybe 4 minute walk to Eye of London. So
okay. Well, maybe we might have to check that out.
That's cool. And Paris is, you can do a lot of things in Paris. But
right.
I would really recommend the house and for you to look at it in Lambeth.
Okay. I'd love to see it. Yeah, if you text it to me.
I'll forward it to you. I'll text it to you.
I appreciate it.
So, but yeah, London, one of my favorite cities. I love it.
Yeah.
I love the vibe.
No, I love it
good.
too. I've been there a few times with the Gumball 3000, and taking my son. My wife has never been. My daughter's never been. So I'm excited about taking them. I love London. I love the West End. I love the restaurants. I love Harrods. If you've never been to Harrods, I'm not a big shopper, but Harrods is just crazy. They got this food court in the bottom that's like Michelin star restaurant set up in a food court. It's just nuts. It is a foodie. Brick Lane probably has the best Indian food in the world, better than Indian food in India.
There's a lot of Indian food in over there. Really good too.
Really good.
Good Indian breakfast.
Oh, really?
All over.
I haven't had breakfast, but I've had a lot of good Indian food.
It's greasy and fatty, but it's good.
Sounds like me.
What is so where else do you want to travel to?
I've been. So me and Bun B got me into this thing called the Gumball 3,000 mile road race. And, I've been around the world doing that, right? Last time I did it, I didn't do this year. Last year it was London to Tokyo, right? Okay. So we went London, Paris, Italy, Switzerland, Italy, or London, France, Switzerland, Italy, and then flew to Osaka. Kyoto,
I think I saw it on your thing. You were with Bun B, right?
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. And we've been other places. We've done like to Bucharest and Prague and Hungary. I haven't been. I always intended to go to Venezuela because my dad was raised there, and then obviously it went socialist and everything went south. The last couple of regimes. I would like to go to Venezuela at some point, but obviously there had to be some significant changes. I've been, when I was a kid, when I was in high school, I spent a summer in Thailand with a family friend. I'd like to go back. It was really amazing. There's some natural beauty and, it was really neat. I don't know. I like traveling, but also I don't like traveling at the same time. Like I like being in Houston. There's so much crap to do in Houston. I got all my friends here, I don't know.
So, I know you represent a couple of, artists.
Right.
I know Zero is one of them, notably one of them. You were all over news with when the home invasion happened.
Right, with Bun
B. So, is there any other?
Yeah, I mean, I did a little civil work on a contractual dispute for Slim, but that was years ago. I've done some civil work for Mike Dean, who is Kanye and Travis's producer. He's actually from Angleton. He's a great guy.
I know Mike Dean really well. Good customer of mine.
Oh, really? He's a great guy, good friend of mine. And I know a whole lot of famous people. I've done little legal things for some comedians and this and that, and nationally well known. But I like representing regular people, and I've done like Ronnie Kellen's the civil client of mine, the chef. For me, it's not trying to find. Some lawyers that focus on finding famous clients, and I don't. Right? It's one of those things where, probably my first one was Bun, a family member of his, but his wife called me and said, no. She talked to some other lawyers, and I just quoted her what I normally charge people. I didn't upcharge them. I didn't make a big deal about it. And I was actually friends with Queen before I was friends with Bun, and it just But I talk to people like they're human beings. I don't talk to them like lawyers. I don't try to maximize every dollar I can squeeze out of everybody, and it kind of resonates with people. And it leads to friendships beyond the representation. And it's worked out. And I think having a diverse friend group, it's easy when you used to be a cop to just hang out with cops or hang out with lawyers or hang out with whatever profession you're in. But I think it's a bad idea. I think you got to get out your comfort zone and talk to real people.
You helped me on a case and you treated me like a VIP.
Well, but I try to treat all my clients like that.
Yeah.
I don't, and I don't ever bring stuff like that up. It was a civil matter. I don't bring up clients and stuff, but no, I try to treat everyone like a VIP, and I try not to gouge people on prices. And it's worked out. There are a lot of lawyers that think I don't charge enough, and they dislike me. And I'm like, but I'm making more money than you, and I have more friends than you. And I have, it's like, to hell with y'all. So
let me ask you. You said TV. I'm going to go back to this TV, radio, judge show.
Yeah.
No book.
I've never had this driving passion to write a book. Like I got pretty good at writing blogs for iHeart because they pushed me, and I enjoy writing. But I couldn't see myself locking myself in a room for 6 months to spit out a book. And if I didn't do that, I wouldn't want to do something mediocre, And honestly, I just don't find my life that interesting. Like people love to talk about like murder cases I did and stuff. Like my wife wants to hear about it and my friends. But for me, it's just not that interesting. You know, I'd rather talk about what my friends are doing. I'd rather go find some new place to eat. Or it's weird for me. Like yesterday, I interviewed Mike Boudet of this crazily popular crime podcast, Sword and Scale. You know, millions of listeners every time, right? It's if you put Sword and Scale, it's huge, right? And he's had some cancel culture issues and some backlash, but a very nice guy, right? And we met. I'd interviewed him before on the phone, and he actually came into the studio with me yesterday. And when I interview people, you know, I'm focused on them. It's very weird. I don't, for people like you to be interviewed. I just don't find myself that interesting, you know? So I don't know. I don't see a book because it seems like it'd be boring to me.
All right. So tell me some of the, like, everyone has inspiration somewhere. May it be through things, through objects, through cars, through people. What would be your 3 top inspirational points?
I think as a kid, so I'd spend every summer at my dad's, but really at my grandparents', right, in Corpus. Mm-hmm. My grandmother was real protective. She was really sweet. And we'd watch daytime TV. She'd smoke cigarettes. And my mom was a vegetarian and a real big healthy eater, so I'd love spending it with my dad's mom because she'd take us to Whataburger for breakfast every morning. We'd go to our country club. It was a very different life from living in a rent house in a not nice neighborhood in Austin to being at my grandmother's house in the Corpus Christi Country Club. And you know, my mom was anti-gun, and I had a pellet gun at my grandparents' house, and I would just shoot wine bottles in the backyard all day. And, you know, but we'd always watch Perry Mason, me and my grandmother. And, you know, the kids listening wouldn't know, but it was a famous TV show about a criminal defense attorney that only represented innocent people, which you can't make a living doing that, right? But that and the fact that my mom didn't finish law school both inspired me to want to be a lawyer. But honestly, kind of neurotic desire to give my kids things that I didn't have as a kid is really what pushed me. When my daughter was born, I just decided I can't be a cop my whole life. You know, I've got to get more focused. I got to finish a U of H. I got to get to law school. And what's driven me a lot as a man has been the desire to give my kids not just what they needed, but what I thought they wanted, right? And on the flip side, you know, like I said, a lot of carrot and stick. And there's little things too, right? Like I love watches, okay? I didn't have a nice watch. The thought of having a couple $1,000 watch is crazy, but $15,000, $16,000 watches, and then having so many, I got to buy a safe to put them in and stuff. And, you know, that's tacky. It's materialistic, but you know what? I like them. I earned them. It's myself. You know, my mom drove junker cars my whole life. I buy myself a new car every couple of years. You know, I don't always love them. You know, I just bought this new Q8, this Audi that I don't even really like. And it was like $98,000, but it's cool, you know, and
makes you happy.
Yeah, I do this gumball thing. It's super expensive. We drive hypercars. It's, you know, but it's all downstream from hard work. Like people want those things, but they don't want to and some people are lucky and they inherit a bunch of money or whatever. But for me, it's always been, I can do things or buy things because I busted my ass working. And, you know, I think you deserve them. And there's so many people that look at and just think they're entitled. And it's what the socialists are preaching, this entitlement to other people's money. You know, Bernie Sanders has a plan that he wants to take 20% of all publicly traded companies for the government to disperse to everybody.
Well, nobody was going to want to work hard.
Right. But that's all. What it does is it's taking 20% of all Americans' 401ks. It's taking 20% of all the people that have busted their butt to achieve something away from them. And it's frightening. And I'm not saying there aren't disparities, and I'm not saying we don't need to do more to make sure that more Americans have the opportunity to succeed and achieve, because we do, right? And that's where the Republican Party fails people, that and the homophobia and racism, right? But the Democratic Party is failing people by preaching this mantra that you can't make it and the government should be taking from people and redistributing. Because really when the government takes, they keep for the government, right?
Yeah.
You know, Bernie Sanders, this is a guy who never had a real job. He was on a commune, got thrown off for not working hard enough, moved in an apartment, stole electricity from his neighbor, and now preaches this mantra of how we just need to take from the haves. You know, but being successful is now, if you're a millionaire, it's a bad word.
Well, so income and inequality is the opposite of outcome and equality.
Right.
So, quick question for you for that. Quick answer. Does socialism work?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
The concept works in like a vacuum, but the reality of it, absolutely not.
Well, we've seen what's going on in Venezuela.
Well, see, the people try to draw a correlation between socialism and Northwestern Europe, but people in Northwestern Europe will tell you quickly, no, this is capitalism with robust entitlement programs, and that's very different. Like Northwestern Europe became wealthy through capitalism, and they decided to use that wealth to do stuff like universal health care, right? And now they're facing a lot of challenges because of there's just a lot of issues in Europe.
Well, there's a lot of issues in our country too. I mean, but this is the best country to be in because
Period.
And I always make America great again. I like it, but America has already been great.
Right. I think, and that's the thing with Trump, and he uses a lot. He's a salesman. Okay, he's not a great guy. He's a salesman. He's full of crap, and but he was willing to be the salesman when his opponent was not willing to give lip service to Americans, right? So I didn't like either of the last candidates. I don't care for either of them at all.
So last thing I'm going to ask you about politics, and I'm going to move away from there.
Good.
What do you think about tariffs?
I think it's self-serving. I think clearly that there was inequities with China and imbalances, but I don't think Trump is trying to fix it. I think he's trying to fix it for him. And like this last round of tax reform, hey, at least taxes didn't go up, okay? But they actually went up for many small businessmen because we lost a whole bunch of deductions.
Yes.
It was actually hurt me and didn't help me. And I think our government is focused on the concerns of the non-participators, whether they're super wealthy or super poor, and both parties have completely turned their back on us in the middle class and the small business person.
So it really hurt the small business.
Right, I think so.
Man. A lot of people think, well, you're in business, that's why you no. Well, I mean,
right.
It really didn't happen that way. It really helped larger companies.
Right.
So, Charles, I want to thank you for coming over here.
Oh, no, thanks for asking.
Where can people find you at?
You can go at Big Angry Law on Instagram. That's my favorite one. I've got a little Twitter. It's also at Big Angry Law. And if you're local, and I notice you're local, and your friend requests me on Facebook, I'll accept it. It's Charles Adams. You can find me on iHeartRadio, my podcast, which is called The Truth with Charles Adams, if you get the iHeartRadio app. And, of course, you can find me on Fox 26. If you look up The Face Off, it's got its own page, and on the Isaiah Factor.
Big Angry Law. So if today was the last day on earth, was your last day on earth, and you have 3 things to leave to your kids and the world, the rest of the world, 3 things to your kids, what will it be?
Well, it was last night on earth. I would spend that day mostly with my kids, doing things.
But what advice would you leave them?
I would tell them to. Would it be my last day on earth or the whole world is going away?
Your last day on earth.
I would press on them that they have to make time for their loved ones, right, and their family, but they also have to work hard enough to provide for them. And then I would say, hey, I need 30 minutes, and I do have sex with my wife.
So last day on earth, provide for your family.
Right.
Work hard.
Right.
We need one more for your kids.
And spend time with the people you love.
With the people you love.
Yeah.
For the world.
Right. For the world, I think people need to understand that if you have the right system of government, and we need to tweak some things in America, but if you everybody's a genius in a different way, right? Mm-hmm. So identify what you're a genius at, because I know, I think we look at other people and say they're a genius, and we don't realize that they are just often not even as smart as you are, but they found ways to make things work, right? So find what you enjoy doing and find what you're good at and focus all your energy on that so you can achieve something, right? I think we should all be nicer to each other. Period. We just need to be nicer, and we should all be a little bit less judgmental and covet. There's plenty of lawyers that make a whole lot more money than me. Whether they want to do it ethically or unethically, I don't care. I'm not in a competition with anybody. I think you need to find happiness within yourself, work hard to achieve your own goals, and just be nice to the people around you that deserve nice, because there are some people that don't deserve nice, and you should be equally unnice to those bastards. But
that is really good. That's some powerful things you said for the world. You keep saying work hard. Before I let you go, I got to ask you. You've said that maybe about 10 times.
Right.
Work hard, maybe more. Why working hard is so important?
I think because when I was a young person, when I was a kid, I was always did very, very well on standardized tests, perfect. Okay, that was my strength. I could destroy an SAT or an ACT or an ITBS or whatever. But I didn't work hard. Like I didn't have a lot of structure. I was the kid that would have 100 test average and like a 30 homework average, right? Because my parents were divorced. My mom worked all the time and, just trying to provide for us. And wonderful mom. But I had a lot of free time, a lot of focus. I started drinking and smoking weed way younger than I should have. And for a good bit of my life, I was just focused on kind of me and what I wanted to do to have fun. And I never thought what I could achieve if I worked hard. And it really wasn't until, not even when my wife got pregnant, but when my daughter was born, that I was like, damn it, I need to stop worrying so much about my own happiness. And I need to start worrying more about how I'm going to get things done. And then when I stopped worrying so much about my own happiness and started worrying more about achievement and hard work, it made me far happier, right? And I think that when you bust your ass and you achieve the goals that you set out for yourself, you're going to be a lot happier than if you just went to the club or the bar, had a drink or whatever. And I think that hard work is the most important thing. I mean, especially if you have a family. So many men.
What time does Charles Adams' day start?
It just depends, right? I wake up very early. Like I'm awake probably at like 5:36 a.m. But if I don't have court in the morning or I don't have anything, I'll be one of those that I'll just lay around and read and get ready for the radio show or get ready for work just from my phone. And sometimes I'll be at the house and my wife's like, why are you still at the house? Why aren't you working? And I'm like, do you see me texting people and yelling at people? And it is work. I'm just not there. But no, I only sleep like 4 or 5 hours a day. I've never been, ever since I spent a few years on night shift patrol, and that just ruined my sleep. And bartending before that and bouncing, that I don't sleep before probably 12 at the earliest, usually 1 a.m. And I'm usually up at 5 or 6 a.m. So I don't, I kind of have this philosophy that I stole from my friend Pritchard from Cardiff and the United Kingdom. Sleep when you're dead.
Sleep when you're dead. Hey, that's a great one. Thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. Thanks for listening to Make Shit Happen. What do you think about the name?
I love the name. I love
Make Shit Happen. Thank you, man.
Thank you. Hey, yes, sir.
Make shit happen. All right. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you.
That was great. You answered so well.